Hey everyone, how's it going? And welcome back to Diary of an Olympic Triathlete. We're now in week 5 of this video series, diary series, whatever you want to call it. Um, and one thing I've noticed, or one thing I've realized, is that I've recorded each of these videos in a different location, which was not at all intentional. It just happened that way that, in between, I was in the US, but I filmed in different locations, and then I came here to Valencia, but then the hospital happened, and now I'm recording this one in my bedroom, but I recorded the other one in my kitchen because I am back in my apartment now, here in Valencia. So that's the good news. We're now 2 weeks post hand injury, hand getting having things happen to it. Um, so there's good bad news. The good news is that I am back home. The bad news is that I haven't been operated yet. I'm actually recording this. I kind of have the plan now that we'll have one of these come out every Monday, just not for any reason except I like the consistency for me. Like that's it. I think it'll be therapeutic to be able to update you guys on kind of this facet of things every week for me. So yeah, that's more than anything why I'm making these videos is because it's free therapy for me, and then for y'all get to know how I'm doing. If if that interests you guys. Anyway, so yeah, my plan is to release these each Monday. This might be coming out on Monday, depending on what I decide to do after recording. But I'm recording on Sunday because tomorrow's Monday, and I will be getting surgery then. So that's the good and bad news is that the surgery is happening quite a bit later than I thought it was going to, because it was supposed to, in theory, happen at some point last week. But as they told me at the hospital, there are a lot of people right now with different injuries and different trauma to the body and whatever. So there was a high demand on their surgeons last week. So they had to push me back to this week. Also, it is the Spanish public health system that I'm working with. So obviously there's high demand. They're known for being kind of slow with these things. So there were people also being like, hey, you could go into the private system, like not people at the hospital, but other people that are like, hey, you could go to a private hospital or you could, go back to the US or whatever, which we're about to get into that. So anyway, news is they're going to operate me on Monday. And then I'll stay there one night in the hospital. And then after that, we will see what happens. Basically, the plan is this. If the surgery turns out all right, which is what they've explained to me, and I think I explained this in the last video too. Basically, I have a tendon in the hand you have two tendons in your hand. There's one tendon that goes all the way to this hop, which is the most important one. And so all this has happened in my index finger specifically. All the rest of my fingers are fine. Like you can see, I'm moving them. We're all good. Just the index finger that can't move. What's happened is basically, so you have two tendons. The most important that goes to the end. That tendon they've said is fine. The other tendon, which goes up to the base of your finger, which is a little less important, or it goes like base halfway. I don't remember exactly, but it's a little less important. But it still is important, and that tendon has been affected. Also, what's been affected are in your finger. You have these little they've called them poleas here, which I think translates to pulleys. But basically, it refers to like you have kind of rings, or that hook the tendon onto your finger, right? So that's what allows the tendon to do its work. Because I could actually lightly move my index finger. I'm not going to do it because it's a bad idea on camera, but I've actually involuntarily moved my finger a couple of times because we are trying to keep it still because you don't want to, any movement could worsen whatever problems that we already have, in the finger. But it can move a very limited amount because the tendon is still connected. It's just only connected at one point. I think it's only connected at the finger because basically from here down, there was a cut that I think affected all of the pulleys on the finger. So basically what they have to do is repair those pulleys or repair those kind of hooks and hook the tendons back on. So fix the one tendon that's been damaged and then, fix the pulleys. And the way they're going to do that is fortunately, there's some people that don't have this. I do. You have two tendons in your arm. You can kind of tell, if you put I don't know exactly how to do it. I think you do like this or this or this or something like that. And then you kind of angle your hand. There you go. So you can see there's multiple, you can see here kind of this tendon, right, that moves. Some people only have one, some people have two. I think most people have two. I don't know exactly what the stats are on that, but I have two. It's apparently like a leftover thing from evolution that some animals had the extra tendon for strength, or some of our ancestors. So they say that that's why some humans still have that as well. So it just kind of depends, what end of things you ended up on. But so I have those multiple tendons, and you have really the only one of the tendons is important, because like we're not going to say the second one isn't important, because all tendons matter, all tendon lives matter. But what happens is, obviously there are people that function with only one tendon. Like the people that are born with only one tendon are completely normal people. Their hands work fine. So you only really need one. Um, so there's one important one. And then the second one that some people like me have is really just supplementary. It gives a little extra strength, I guess. I don't know all the science there. So the idea is that they could take that tendon out, nothing would happen necessarily, and then they'll use that to basically go onto my finger and kind of do the reattachment process and reconstruct the damaged tendons and etc. There's also some nerves that are damaged, so they said they're going to get the nerves as close together as possible, and then basically use a gel to stick them together and then hope that they grow together over time. Although there's no guarantee that will happen, so it's possible that I'll definitely be able to move this finger, but there's a possibility that at least in part of the finger I might no longer have any feeling. That said, I'm obviously going to have to be very delicate with, my treatment, with how I treat the finger. I'm going to have weekly physical therapy appointments and things I'll be doing. So, there will be treatment. I'm well taken care of. And the good news is that the public hospitals in Spain are very good. They've actually said, like, the people I've talked to here in Spain, for instance, they've said, like, it is true that the hospitals here are a bit slower, but at the public hospitals, you're getting the best doctors. If I went to a private practice, I would definitely get in faster. I mean, I wouldn't at this point, but, if I had originally gone to a private doctor, I would have gotten in quicker for surgery. But then it's not like the best in the country. And it's not the best equipment in the country, because I'm in one of the best hospitals in the country. So basically that's to say, good news. I'm going to get operated and the doctors are qualified. Every time I've talked to them, they have definitely given me good vibes, good energy of like, these people know what they're talking about. So we'll see how the operation goes, but if everything goes good and according to plan, it's that one operation, and then every week after that, I'm going to be getting checked up on. They'll be looking at the injury. I'll be doing physical therapy and just focusing on my recovery. So with that said, I mentioned briefly returning to the U.S. as like a thing we talked about. And the reason I mentioned that, and I'm saying, and I said I was going to bring it up later, I'm bringing it up now. I don't know why I do this, by the way. I just like make reference to things and I get all double crossed. Anyway, point is, I mentioned going back to the US because we're now talking about doing that. Because fortunately, my mom has come to visit me because she was already coming around these dates anyway for A, my birthday, because my birthday's coming up, and B, she has a conference in Berlin that she has to go to. So she was actually kind of doubling together where she was going to come for my birthday and then go to Berlin for this conference. And now that I'm injured and she has the time to come over here, fortunately, with, her work and whatnot, she just kind of made the extra stop she brought her ticket forward. And so she's come here, a week or week and a half sooner. And that's been so that she can assist me while I'm here. Because, obviously I got this hand, this one works fine, this one does not work fine. And there's a lot of tasks that you don't really think about it in your daily life until it happens to you, but you really do need both your fingers or both your hands for everything. Like, especially your index finger is so important, because like I still use my left hand for certain things with these fingers, but the difference between pinching something between my thumb and my third and my thumb and my index is ginormous. Like the strength difference and the distance and all that, which means that, say I want to open something as simple as a bag of chips. How do you do that? You grab it with your thumb and index finger in each hand and do this. Well, now I can't do that, right? Like that's such a simple thing, but like, there's so many things like that. Or opening a can of anything. Opening bottles now is really weird because, I guess, I don't know how left-handed people do it, but like right-handed people, because I'm right-handed, and my left hand is the affected one, I grab the bottle with my right hand and left hand twist it, right? Well, now I can't do that. Now I gotta like kind of like sandwich it with my arm between my forearm and my chest, and with my right hand do this. And if it's a hard open bottle, that's not going to work because I don't have the grip. Like it'll slide. So obviously there's a lot of like small things that have become a lot harder, and it's been good to have my mom, who kind of made the extra time to come over here, who does have two functioning hands, to be able to do some of those simple things that I couldn't do. Because the first couple of days I was here alone, it was kind of hard. Because like right when they sent me home from the hospital, they sent me home Tuesday. She got here on Thursday. So those first 2 days I was here alone, and that was a little difficult in some ways. So that's why we've been talking about it because my mom, after my birthday, she's going to go to Berlin for the conference and then she has to go home. And I still have, in theory, 2.5 months left here in Valencia. Um, like that's how long I've planned to rent this place I'm staying in, and then I have the triathlon in Geneva, which is still, it's becoming progressively more a fading idea. But the triathlon that's kind of we had there in the distance, but that's 2 months of like my finger's going to be slowly recovering. So it's going to be at least a month until the finger can really do anything. And then even at that point, it's going to be very limited what it can do. And it's going to be slowly, we're going to, recover the strength and the mobility and the sensation. But it's going to take up to 12 weeks, it sounds like, to get full strength back. And then even longer for it to be like completely 100% functional. So that would be a more or less July is when we're talking about I'm going to have a fully functional finger again. So that's going to be, I'm operating with one hand here for 2.5, 3 months. Like basically until the end of my time here in Valencia, I'm not going to have, I'm going to be one-handed for most intents and purposes, which, yeah, that's going to be really hard. And so we've been thinking about that. And we've been really heavily discussing the possibility of me heading back to the United States because I don't have too many things that I'm like super, obligated to here. Like I don't have anything. Like I'm here by choice. So if I wanted to, I could just be like, hey, landlord, I'm sorry. It's been great staying at your apartment, but I have to go home. They might keep us part of what I've already paid, but that's about it. I think fair enough. Like I did promise to rent the place for 3 months. I'll only have rented it for a month. So, we'll work out the deals there. But yeah, that's a pretty real possibility at the moment, is that I'll just head back to the US, because that way, I could have my support system there, because the problem is here I'm alone. So like every single thing I have to do alone. So that's cooking, cleaning, everything I have to do alone, and now one-handed. Like when I had both hands, it was fine. But obviously now that it's one-handed, like something as simple as, cleaning a pot. What do you have to do to clean a pot? You can't stick it in the dishwasher, so you have to hold it down with one hand and scrub with the other hand if there's something, on there that you really have to clean out. And I can't do that, because if this gets wet, it's bad news. And actually, right now it's just like a plaster outside, kind of like a bandage inside. What I've been told is it'll be a full cast right after I get operated, because this needs to be perfectly still. Because if I move the reattached tendons at all right after they've been, right after they've been operated, it can really screw things up, because it's a very, precise maneuver that they've done, or that they will have done. So, it's gonna be like, I can't get this wet at all. There's so many things I won't be able to do with it. So it looks like it's gonna be really complicated. Obviously, though, that would then mean that all triathlon dreams in Europe are completely dead, and I have to start looking much more down the line of when could we do this. But I will say it also just seems more realistic, like more practical, because what I was looking at right now was I'd kind of set some dates of like, okay, in 4 weeks post-op, I can start working out lightly, increasing my intensity gradually. And then maybe like 6 weeks post-op, I will attempt to swim. And if I can, that would be 4 weeks before my triathlon. So then I could do the triathlon. That was my logic. But that would mean that 10 weeks post-op, I would be in Switzerland swimming. Yeah, like swimming a mile in a triathlon. Like that's a lot to ask out of my hand that just got operated with like newly repaired tendons. And like if my hand gives out on me during that triathlon, what does that mean? Like I gotta get it operated again. Like that would just create such a long series of complications. Because like the one thing I want from this is, and just in general, like the one thing I want as a person and as an athlete, is to not be someone with recurring injuries, because that's just the most frustrating thing ever. All right, sorry, I just got interrupted by my mom coming in. But as I was saying, it is frustrating to deal with recurring injuries. Like I also follow quite a few other sports. I follow more than anything football and basketball. And in those sports, you will see certain very talented athletes that deal with just constant injuries. Like for instance, in basketball, the big example is Zion Williamson, where like he is a super talented player. Whenever you see him on the court, he's having these ridiculous performances. And like even, right when he came into the league and, right before he got drafted, he was like this massive like superstar. Everyone was super excited to see him in the league. And he's been pretty underwhelming during his time in the league because he's just not on the court very often. Like he played, I think they said it was 100 something games in his first 4 seasons, which each season is 82 games. So he was, like out of 400 games he could have played, he only played 100 because like most of the time he was dealing with some kind of injury. And this season he's finally gotten more healthy, but even then it's a similar problem. So that's kind of like, I don't know, that's kind of what I'm thinking is like I don't want to be that, but for triathlons, like every other month I'm getting some injury in some part of, whatever, like some knee injury or some calf injury or some whatever. And the problem is this definitely has a potential to turn into a recurring injury if it doesn't heal correctly the first time. So that's why I'm really doing everything I can. Like, obviously, I care about triathlons and about sports in general. And like, I want to get back out there at some point. But it is true that I need to focus on this first. Like, the most important thing to my athletic stuff, especially triathlon because of the swimming, is that this needs to heal correctly. So there's definitely a big part of me that's like, right, don't take things too quickly, let this thing heal. So, and like the timeline that I was looking at to try and go back to do that triathlon in Switzerland was just too quick. Like I was really trying to push it because I was excited to do it, to do the triathlon. And so obviously while I was in the hospital and while I was, kind of making my plans for everything, I was very much like pushing everything up as soon as possible so that it could in theory be possible for me to make it to that triathlon. But it's like 10 weeks post-op with a repaired tendon, swimming a mile in open water is just ridiculous. And then also like on top of that, think about like the training and preparation that I'm going to have lost 8 to 10 weeks of preparation in between everything because, I've already lost 2 and I'm going to lose another 4 to 6. So I guess no, I'd be more like 8. So eight weeks of preparation, but that's a lot. Like that's a lot of preparation because all of that time, if it wasn't for this injury, was going to be spent 5 days a week, me going to the gym, sometimes multiple times, working on, my strength, my cardio, my, doing interval sessions, doing long runs, doing long bikes that were going to get up to 2.5 hours long, doing long swims that are going to get up to 2.5 kilometers. Like I had quite a few goals set out for what's the length going to look like, and then intensity, getting up to super like high intensities for my swim, my bike, and my run. And it's like those are all things that they were there for a reason. Like they're not just window dressing. Like they're really things that I was going to need to do because, in theory, I could complete an Olympic triathlon if my hand was good, obviously. I could complete one right now, but I would complete it very slowly and not under good conditions. Like to be able to do it in an Olympic triathlon and finish it comfortably, I was going to need all of that preparation that I had. Like even with all of the time that I'd given myself, I still wasn't going to do everything I'd wanted to do in terms of like interval sessions. And there were like a couple things that I wasn't going to 100% get all the way there, but I was like, I ain't good enough. Like, like I'm going to be a week short on where I would have liked to be, but it's fine. So that's kind of how I was, looking at things. And now it's like, no, like now it's just like, no, because you've taken half of my plan or more than half of the plan out of where it was. And it's like on top of that, I'd be coming back injured. It's just not a good idea. So, I mentioned like the open water part. Like I'd have to learn a lot of abilities because I'd done triathlons before, but they were all indoors. So I hadn't swam in open water. I hadn't dealt with transitions really, like the actual act of transitioning of putting on your shoes, your bike shoes, putting on your running shoes, changing, taking off your wetsuit, getting your bike set up, like a bike especially. I hadn't really biked outdoors much, so I hadn't dealt with like the bike maneuvering and, especially the like specific triathlon bikes, because obviously I'd ridden bikes before, but not like, not the triathlon bikes with the aero bars and all that stuff. So there was a ton of stuff that I was going to have to learn how to do. And, with 3 months, it was already going to be a little tight, but I was like, it's going to work out fine because I have a swim instructor. Like I had a guy that could help me with the swim part. And then, with the biking and whatnot, I was going to have people to help me out with that. And, obviously I have the internet. And so, I felt reasonably prepared in that aspect, but now it's just like, there's no way. Like when I'm looking at things realistically, by the beginning of July, it's just not possible. So I have to make the right decision in terms of, okay, go back to the US, focus on recovery. So that means I'm going to get the surgery here in Spain, and then I'm going to immediately look for doctors in the US who can help me out with the physical therapy and doing the follow-up and all that stuff. And they'll be the ones that can clear me to, get back into doing activities, athletic activities. And that said, triathlon and athletics and stuff is not out of my life. Like I've been maintaining fitness this week. I've been going for some pretty long walks and, even brisker walks. I went to the gym one day and I did like a bike elliptical session there. Obviously I had to go lower because it's not a great idea to sweat too much with this thing on, but I was doing a certain level of intensity. Like my heart rate maybe got up to 130, I'd say, on the elliptical. Like it was a reasonable, zone 2 type of thing. And then I was doing some strength sessions. So I did a strength session for my shoulders and then one for my legs. And post-op, if everything's okay, I'm going to keep doing those because they're also good just for maintaining, the strength here that I was getting from doing my activities, and now I can't do those. So it'll be kind of a replacement of like the way I've structured it is kind of like the training plan that I had before of like, okay, this is a swim day. What I've replaced it now is okay, today I'm going to do a walk and then a shoulder routine, because that'll kind of mimic this walk is the cardio impact and the shoulder routine is the muscle building and that kind of stuff that would have happened had I gone and swam for 30, 40 minutes. So that's the idea. I've been doing that because, once I am medically cleared to get back into running and biking and swimming, I want to do all those things. But that said, I'm focused more on the running more than anything because, number one, that's my favorite sport, but also that's the one that's the most realistic for me to get into quickly, like soon, So that's what I'm looking at right now is because I think 4 to 6 weeks post-op, I could get back into running, which, let's see, I'm going to get operated tomorrow, which would be April 22nd. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Already on May 13th, I could start running again. Well, that's pretty good. I would say I would consider that to be good. Obviously we're going to have to take it light, but already we're looking at 4 weeks, May 13th I could already start. Let's go with some light runs, some recovery runs, some recovery bikes, right? And then slowly work up the intensity as we're going. And then so maybe by the beginning of June I could already start getting a little bit more intense, maybe start doing a couple interval sessions, blah blah. And that actually works out very well because there is so my dad, who's also a pretty avid runner, he's been looking at trying to break a 540 mile. And he kind of has 3 ideas of doing it because there are 2-mile races in our city that are coming up this summer. So his first 2 ideas were to try to do his attempt during one of those 2 races. His other idea was to just do a time trial on a track at some point whenever he felt ready. He's also dealing with, some injuries and whatnot. So he's trying to make sure he's in good condition, with those injuries to be able to do the attempt. But there is one of the biggest races is in July as well. It's actually not too far from when the triathlon was going to be. But I think I would be in running shape. I wouldn't be in triathlon shape by that time, but I would be in running shape. And so I could attempt it with him because I'd like to break a 6-minute mile. Maybe that's a ridiculously elevated goal, but I've had that in mind. I think I might have mentioned that in some previous videos. I'd like to break a 6-minute mile, and I think this could be a good opportunity for now that I literally cannot do triathlons. I focus on a running goal that I have, so I could just generally work on my running fitness. I could do. Because I'm thinking I would start with, short recovery runs and then maybe, kind of start building things up to the point where I'm doing every week I'm doing 4 runs. I'm doing a longer run and a shorter recovery run type thing. I do 1 tempo session, maybe my 10K pace for 30, 40 minutes, something like that. Or maybe a little bit slower, but a kind of tempo, session. Maybe some intervals or whatever in there. And then I'd do 1 intense interval session that would be specifically working on my mile speed. So I do 400s, for instance. Or I could, we could workshop a bit the schedule and then maybe even do another day every week. That would be a bike or something, right? So maintaining my general, my well-roundedness, but focusing on the running part because that's what my health is going to allow me to do. And then obviously, managing things so that I don't turn that into like calf or knee injury stuff, because that would be bad. Obviously taking care of my legs, because that's the most important part of this whole machine here. In terms of triathlon and athletics, of course. So that's a potential idea. I'll go kind of developing that idea as we go, and like we have not confirmed by any means that I head back to the US. There's still a chance that I stay here in Valencia, and if I do, I was looking at, there's a mountain race in late June in Switzerland. It was actually also not too far from the dates of the triathlon, and that was going to be 7.5K of like a pretty steep mountain race. So it looks kind of interesting. So I was considering training up to do that race. And if I did, it could be fun, could be cool, it could be a good time. And that could be a way to almost commemorate the triathlon as well, because it wouldn't be in Geneva, but it would be in the German part of Switzerland. But it could be a way to kind of commemorate what the triathlon would have been and do another athletic event that would be fun and something that physically I would be, capable of doing within, my injury constraints and whatnot. Obviously, though, the timeline that I'm assuming here is a quite optimistic one. So, we're going to have to give it some time. But yeah, those were kind of some ideas that I had, was like, slowly work my way back into fitness via running and via biking as I am cleared to do those activities. And then, once I'm cleared to start swimming, which would be more or less the first week of July, we could assume that's 12 weeks post-op. Then, start slowly getting back into swimming, and I can maybe look at doing a triathlon at the end of August, because now, like, I'm going to be in the US from when I get back, which could be as soon as next week, until the end of August, because then I would come back at the beginning of September for college here to Spain. And so given that I'm now going to have, like, we have the rest of April, which the rest of April is 10 days, which that's an existential crisis for you. April's almost already over. That's crazy. But I have May, June, July, and then August, if we want to count most of August. So, like, if we're counting the end of April as well, that would give me 4 months from now until when some theoretical end of August triathlon would be. So I've been looking at, around my city. There's some potential triathlons I could do, Olympic distance and sprint distance. I'm thinking I might do sprint distance, just because you really don't want to push things at this stage of affairs. And Olympic triathlons, if you have, athletic goals, do require a good amount of preparation. And I would have maybe 6 to 8 solid weeks of prep, assuming, once I'm cleared to start swimming again. But that would be, the swimming part would have to go very lightly. So that's kind of one part where I'm like, because also my training would have to change quite a bit from training for a mile race to training for a Olympic distance triathlon, which is a lot longer. So there's a chance I might just do a sprint triathlon instead and just be like, all right, I'm going to have fun with my family. And then maybe like later next fall, I could look at doing an Olympic distance triathlon, or I've also been thinking about doing a half marathon. So maybe that would be kind of what I transitioned into. And then, triathlons might be, we'll leave that for the future. We're really going to have to see. I just need to get operated. Everything needs to go smoothly there. And like, I need to, the one thing I'm trying not to do too much here, which is really hard to avoid doing, but I'm really trying, is just not like give it too many, don't be like there just turning the wheels and like kind of going in circles around the whole thing, because it's not worth it, right? Like, I can't control what's going to happen. If the surgery doesn't go well, then also my dreams of doing this mile race and doing a sprint triathlon in August, those are also dead. And like, I mean, a couple of days ago, I thought like certainly I was going to do this mountain race in Switzerland as a replacement. And then I got the idea of coming back to the US, and now the whole, focus has kind of changed. So things change very quickly in terms of like my mentality, because I'm switching just a lot. Like, as I think about things more and more, I'm changing a lot what I think is the right or the wrong thing. And then also like, the actual circumstances of what happens, because, if you would have asked me as I was recording last week's, diaries or last week's video, I would have said, well, I think I'll get operated in 3 days. But no, it's like, no, you're actually getting operated in a week. And that, it's a small change, but it does change a little bit, kind of the whole structure, because it takes a week away. And at this point, we are playing a bit with a game of inches, of like, if you're trying to get to the events that are relatively soon, so. That's the other thing that sucks about injuries. Like, when I got injured, I was doing something relatively stupid. And of course, I wasn't thinking about the impact any of that was going to have. Like, well, I didn't even think I could get injured from it, at least in this way. And yes, like now that you think about it, it's also depressing because I'm talking about already August. Like August is when I will be able to do a fraction of what I could do now. And August is a long time away. Like August is we're in the 4th month. August is the 8th month. So 4 months from now, I'll be able to do more or less what I'm doing right now, or like what I was doing before. Like it's just gonna take that long to get back to where I was, and that's definitely a depressing thought. So that's just one thing that I'm dealing with a little bit is like that kind of mental part of like accepting that every injury just takes so much time with it, because if it hadn't been for this injury, I'd be looking at I would have already done the Olympic triathlon and then maybe even started focusing on a couple other events. Like there would have been a lot of things that I could have focused my attention on that I won't be able to. So, it's unfortunate. But that's life. It's like you get injured, you got to take care of yourself first. The athletics, like I'm still going to be talking about that in these diaries, but it's definitely the actual physical therapy and me getting better is going to have to be the focal point. Like that's what matters here is, like obviously I like to do a triathlon, but if the doctor's like, hey, you swimming 800 meters is going to, 750 meters is going to be bad for your hand, then you shouldn't do that. So, and I can't be like, no, I disagree. Cause it's like, I mean, I could try it. Like that is one thing I thought about. So I'm like, if I really, really wanted to, I could, but then it would have impacts. Like this is all voluntary. Like I'm all choosing not to do these things in a way, but that's because the consequences of me doing them are worse than, not being able to do a thing that I like doing. So, it is what it is. It's just giving it time, but it's all this. I gotta kind of theorize and think of, all right, what's the correct way to kind of go about this? Because obviously there's the mile race. Another way I could look at this is I could set some running goal of like running a 10K maybe by early July. So then I could really focus my training on. I could do bikes and swims that are Olympic training kind of level, and so that way I could get to do the 10K and then incorporate my swimming, and then in theory I could maybe swim by the end of August. So I could like I by the end of August swimming a mile wouldn't be crazy, because it is 4 months. So and like 4 months ago I could barely swim. So like the comparison of yeah, because 4 months ago was late December 2023. I couldn't even swim like 4 laps continuously. So I think, yeah, if you give it 4 months is also a long time. Like you gotta give time to do things the way it needs to do them. So 4 months is a long way down. We also don't know exactly what's going to happen in the time frame that we have until then. So in that sense, yeah, we're gonna let time work its magic, man. We don't know what could happen. And I just got to keep theorizing of like I could plan for 10K and kind of train for that, and then maybe just include a couple sessions in a marathon. Because actually, it's not a bad idea. Because now that I think about it, right? Like, if I'm training to do this mile race, most runs I'd be doing are long runs anyway that are just building up your base. Like once a week, I would do a tempo run, like an interval session that's based on improving my mile time. But you can't do that session more than once a week because of how much stress it puts on the body. And it wouldn't really change much aside from that. Like it would literally just be that. Like I just do that mile session. Everything else could really be, like runs at my 10K pace or runs slower than my 10K pace. Like that, they're going to have to be that way anyway. And like bikes as well, because they're lower impact. So taking that all into account, I mean, honestly, it's not that crazy to say, okay, I'll do like a mile run, I'll do this 10K, and then I could do an Olympic triathlon, because I'll basically have been training for the Olympic triathlon by just working on my base fitness. Because that's really like more than anything what those training plans are, is building base fitness. So anyway, let's just say Olympic triathlon dreams are not completely dead. I'm going to have to do a lot of workshopping of the ideas. And next week, you guys might see a very different Jonah coming in these videos with, explaining what his new idea is. Because I'm a dreamer. I like to think of a lot of ideas and theorize a lot of things. So we'll see what actually happens. But anyway, that's all. I'm going to leave y'all here with this video. Thank you for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or whatever, or charges of heresy, that's one thing my history teacher always used to say is like questions, comments, charges of heresy. I didn't know what heresy was at that point because I was in middle school, but it was funny. Anyway, if y'all have anything you guys want to say in the comments below, subscribe or like or whatever. If you guys do those things, I don't know what y'all do. And yeah, and I will see you all in the next video, the next Diary of an Olympic Triathlete next Monday. I think this video, I'm going to upload it right now. Like I have to edit to put the clips together, but then I'm just going to upload it right now on Sunday. But it'll be next Monday when you guys see the next edition of these diaries. And I think from then on, it'll be every Monday. I'll try to keep it to that, keep it relatively consistent. But anyway, that's all. See y'all later. Peace.